everyone. This is Chase Hawkins. We're here today with Testimony Strong. It is presented by VET S.O.S. And here on this channel, we are all about the 99 going to find the one. It is all about our testimonies and how we preach the gospel. And because we are not theological, we use our stories to connect with those. And today I'm here with Shawn, and let me tell you, he is not just a biblically bound man. He is the one that got me to do this show. So you can thank him for this. We are so excited. He is the co-founder of VET S.O.S. He's also a host on VET S.O.S. So he kind of is an all-encompassing, does it all. He was in the Army for over 20 years. He has several different degrees, all with encompassing leadership and how development. He created this aspect all about veterans and how did their transition work. So he is not just for the military, but that aftermath afterwards that most people just have a hard time getting through. So there's so many other channels on that SOS that actually help with that transition period. He can kind of go more into that, but here, this is all about that biblical, your faith-based, your walk with Jesus, your before and your after, and how that really commits to your life today. And so, with that being said, Shawn, brother, welcome. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for forcing me to do this. So it has helped me increase my faith tenfold and every interaction that I have afterwards. So I just want to thank you and tell us a little bit about the SOS, how it got started, what made you come up with this channel specifically, and you can dive into a little bit of the other channels, and then we'll get into your testimony.
I like how you use the word aftermath when it
Yeah.
came to transition. That's a good term. I like that. And just to be clear, there's nobody on that side of the camera holding you at gunpoint here because you kind of made it sound like I had you hostage to do this.
To make it sound that way, 100%.
Oh man, I am so excited, man. For the first time you and I met, that there was just something, man, about you that I knew was special, and I'm so excited that you've agreed to do this because I think this is going to be just so powerful, to capture the story of our veterans, their testimonial and their journey with Christ and with God, and I'm so excited that you decided to do this, man. I'm really excited to have you a part of the team. As far as VET S.O.S goes, it all started with a mentor pushing me to do this. He saw something and said, "Hey, you need to start a podcast." And I was like, "No, I don't. I don't need to do that at all." But he kept after me, and I thank him. And he's a man of God too, which is even greater. It's he just
Sounds similar. I'm just saying. I
yeah.
feel like
Maybe I learned
there's a
something from him.
yeah, there's a ladder there.
Yeah. But yeah, so he pushed me to do it, and then his business partner and co-host on their show was a veteran, Mark, and so Mark came on board to help me start this. And so for the first year, he walked me through how they did stuff and gave me pointers and co-hosted with me. And currently the vice president on the board now that we're a nonprofit. And then, of course, Eric Brew, who will have an interview coming up here, I believe, next week. He became my co-host for seasons 2 and 3, and just helped us continue to move that. And that's really where the idea for this show started, was Eric and I talking about it and trying to figure out, how do we do something like this? And it got kind of put on the back burner for a little while. Eric, left the show and then went into being the Georgia director for Warrior Set Free, and the ministry that he's a part of now, and where you and I met. And through that whole process, I brought in another co-host, Keith, who's still my co-host, and at the same time, we started an education show to help transitioning service members and families and military connected students learn about the other benefits that they have on campus, under the vet centers. And then we have an entrepreneur show for veteran and veteran entrepreneurs to help teach them about the resources and the tips and tricks and what that whole entrepreneurial journey looks like. And of course, we have The Scoop, which is a variety show, allows us to do stuff that maybe is not, really 100% transition out of the military, but can be transition adjacent, can be transition, but also can be some other things. So we've done a lot of book author or interviews with authors and their books and things like that. We've done some panel discussions, things like that. So It's just really exciting, and then, we're getting ready to launch this show, and we'll also be launching a spouse show this year as well. So, exciting times as we continue to grow, and became a nonprofit last year, and just really excited for the future and where we're going to be heading, so that we can continue to help our community with the transition out of the military and the other transitions we face in life.
That's awesome. I mean, just for one, what a great vision. And for two, I mean, everybody can have a dream. It's a different story when you put it into reality. And you've really, the multitude of different directions that Vet SOS has, and the resources. I can't tell you, like, myself included, when you get out, you're kind of, deer in headlights of, what can I do? What things are beneficial to me and my family? And we're still learning those things as we go because it's not, it's not cut and dry. And so what a great opportunity. And then for me to be blessed enough to be a host on Testimony Strong. I mean, I can't tell you how awesome this really is because it's not a, it, I may be able to help tell other people's stories, but it's only benefits me. So this is a selfish endeavor for myself because this increases my faith more than anything because I get to see how many people, how God works in so many people's different lives, and that's such a blessing to be a part of that. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and not a gun to the head, even though I'm going to make it out to be that way. Uh,
I'll tell you, man, that's been the response of everybody who's ever hosted any
yeah,
of the shows that we have. Is it's as much a benefit to them as
yeah,
it is to the audience, because as veterans, we still need that tribe, and as Christians, I mean, we learn. Oh man, we get excited with testimonies, don't we?
yeah,
And
yeah. No,
so
100%.
th-
It's
th-
that battle, dude.
yeah.
Well, that being said, let's get into your battle.
All right.
So, Shawn, tell me about your testimony. And I guess I always like to get a background on somebody. So, where did you start off with your faith? I mean, did you have an upbringing in it?
Yeah. So, I grew up in a military family. My dad was Navy, and we were raised Catholic. I went all the way through confirmation in the Catholic Church, and left the Catholic Church pretty much after I graduated high school. So I had that baseline there. Going to, what do they call it? CCD, I think was what they called it, when you went to the church group stuff for the at the
Oh,
different
yeah, yeah.
grade levels and stuff
Yep.
like that. And then of course going to church, and I was definitely raised within the church. Um,
Did you
and
feel
then
that spiritually, or was that more of like a moral background for you? I feel like that's always a key factor.
I think it was more, you didn't have an option, you were going to church.
Yeah, yeah. Like
For
just,
me, as especially,
what you,
you
what your
know,
dad says is what
yeah,
goes.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it was, there were definitely moments, so like the church we were at made first communion really special.
Mhm.
So there was definitely something there, and the fact that we had, family friends from years ago and grandparents and everything else that came to the first communion and made it special for me.
Mhm.
You definitely can feel the presence of God during events like that, and your confirmation and things like that. But I don't know that I truly ever understood it or appreciated it in real time. I think now that I'm older, looking back, I can appreciate the fact that I had the baseline put there, whether I wanted to go or not. But I learned a lot, and I always had that there to kind of fall back on. And I probably always had that spirit voice on my shoulder saying, don't do that, dummy. And not that I always listened to it, but
Yeah.
there was always something there.
So if you would consider that your foundation, but not essentially spiritually, I would call it spiritually mature, right? Like it's not having the full understanding, but essentially your family is kind of giving you a baseline to play off of. And what's great about that is it sets a foundation. What the image in my head keeps on playing is essentially just, a structure of a home. First, you lay your footings before you actually start stick building a home, right? And, whether that home crashes and burns, you still have that footing, right? So you have something to fall back on and build back from. And I think that's a key factor. So I guess with your upbringing from that point, where does that lead you? Did you join the military right out of high school, or was there some time gap there? What does that look like?
So once again, slow learner.
Yeah.
So I didn't join the military actually till 28. I
Oh,
joined after 9/11, after sitting around doing absolutely nothing after
yeah.
college. I mean, I was working, but like I was doing nothing physical or active, for sure. And
How was it being 28 years old as a boot?
um, interesting. Um, Now, I mean, I was always one of those kids that like I would push all the way up to the line, but I didn't go across the line 'cause I didn't like being in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I would say my brother always went screaming past the line, but he disagrees with me.
That's
Um,
funny.
but so like I think going in, it provided some benefits and some challenges, right? So I was older and more mature than some of the kids, so I could help guide a little bit. I wasn't a problem soldier for the drill sergeants, so they appreciated that. Not that they'd ever tell you they appreciated that, but
Yeah.
I was able to, like I remember the first night, that my bunkmate that I was tied to for the whole time, was just mouthing off, and we're sitting there doing push-ups in front of the drill sergeant, and he wouldn't shut up. And finally, I just told him to shut up, and the drill sergeant's like, "Listen to your buddy."
Yeah.
It's like, stop talking, man. Um, and But then I also had some issues in the sense that, I came in kind of knowing who I was. I had worked in retail as a store manager. I made every mistake in the book you can make, and I kind of, learned how to be a leader before I came in the military. And so I would say there were some things that I probably pushed back on because I didn't necessarily agree with them or like them at the time.
Uh-huh.
But all in all, throughout the military, I definitely learned a whole lot more about leadership and how to do certain things and implement certain practices and techniques. Um, but there was definitely, like my first unit, there were a couple of times I probably overstepped my bounds. My mouth
Yeah.
got way out in front of me.
So, how would you describe your spirituality, like, first going in the military? So like, I feel like we stopgapped a few years. You have a foundation, not spiritual mature. You're out of the house. You kind of got a, 8, 10 year span there. So what was I guess, did you continue that spiritual growth while you were on your own, going through college, things like
No.
that? Or was that okay? So like transition out of mom and dad's house is like, no, we're
Yeah.
doing Sean here.
Yeah. So I was out of the church. It was probably another 12 years or so ish before I went back. Um, yeah, well, once I left the church at about 18, I didn't go back for quite a while. Didn't really pray or anything like that. And
Why do you think that was?
I would say that it was probably a little bit of just the rebellion piece, right? You're 18 now. You're a man.
Mhm.
You don't need to be told what to do and what have you. And we also moved, and every time you move, you got the whole process of trying to find a church. And I think at that point, my parents were still going to the Catholic Church, and I was probably more of a Christmas, Easter person.
Mm.
I'm sure there were times in there they made me go as well, but ultimately it led to me moving out of the house too. My dad and I, bumping heads all the time. It was time for me to move out. And after that, him and I had a much better relationship, and um, and then I think moving out of that house is one of those key things where that's where you start growing up.
Yeah.
You realize that you can't have the thermostat on 60, because that power bill is going to take your entire paycheck, and stuff like that, and just being able to budget to eat,
Yeah.
that's kind of a key factor. So you're taking all that in and growing up and all that. So, but I was in college doing all the college stuff. I'd go to class occasionally too, but I was doing all the fun stuff in college, and I
I'm
was
assuming
working.
drinking, women, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, all the above.
Okay.
And I was working, and then so once I graduated, I continued to work, and then it wasn't until 9/11 happened that I decided I needed to do something a little bit more with my life, and decided to join the military. Um, Wanted to join the Coast Guard. They told me I was too tall, so I couldn't do that. And so ultimately, found my way to the Army, and from there. I would say there really was no spirituality in there, no
Mhm.
praying or anything like that until um, I got to my first duty station, and I was immediately being sent downrange
So
to Iraq.
So I don't mean to pause you there,
Yeah.
and I definitely want to get back to that portion of going down range. But when you're going in the military, you said there's no spirituality aspect for it, and but you're learning great skills. So like you said, you like your leadership had really changed even be prior to the military. You kind of get that. So like I guess this is the impression that I'm getting is like you're building essentially worldly characteristics that are essentially good and healthy, and it's helping you be a good leader in the military, but you don't really have the spirituality with that in alignment. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm growing, I'm developing as a person, as a man,
Mhm. Yep.
and I'm working and going home and drinking and doing manly stuff.
So and this is kind of where I'm taking this is so because I've dealt with this within my own life and a multitude of people that I know that I'm really close with is that it's because we're doing like we're building our leadership skills because we're doing X, Y, and Z. We're in the military. We're a store manager, whatever the case may be. It's like, hey, these are all real good pros. Like I'm doing fairly well on my own here, and this is the Chase way. This is the Shawn way, right?
Yep.
And so it like doesn't really matter if I'm doing the drinking or whatever, the sideline stuff, like my goods outweigh my bad. So in turn, I'm okay. Right. So it gives you that kind of plausibility. All right. That just want to give a summary of where we're sitting at. All right. So now you're headed back in, you're going down range. Tell me about that.
So, had a conversation. I think I was like leaving the next day or whatever. I called home to say goodbye and all that. And, my dad just, he didn't even sugarcoat it. He's like, you better get right with the Lord. I was like, okay. I think that's probably the first time I prayed in a long time.
Mm.
Just for, I didn't know what I was getting into. Right. And,
Yeah.
what was going to happen and what have you. And, um, now, I think more than anything, that was, it was easy to fall back on the baseline at that point. I wasn't by any means like giving my life to Christ again and
Mhm.
walking that right path.
More of
Um,
a fear factor.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the God is a vending machine type, praying, hey,
Yeah.
keep me safe,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And so, that was probably the first iteration. And I can't recall ever going to a church service deployed. I'm sure I probably did. Um, always knew who the chaplains were, had conversations with the chaplains a lot. But yeah, during 4 different deployments, I don't recall going to church very often.
So, with those deployments, and I mean that's a long duration, especially for deployments, right? Especially overseas without family, the workups in between that time and you're still not nothing's panning out. So, I guess if you're on on a walk going up and down mountains, I guess, where are you at from a life standpoint? What's going on in your life? You married, kids, are, leadership style, any issues with the military, or is still like, are you on that pathway of like, you know what, I'm doing okay. I've had these accomplishments. I feel kind of right as my own man.
So my wife and I got married before the military. Um,
Okay. So you've been married this whole time.
yeah, yeah. So we
Yeah.
got married about a year and a half before the military. We met in college, and in fact, this will come out afterwards, but our 25th anniversary is coming up. So,
Oh, congratulations. That's
thank
awesome,
you.
brother.
Very, very excited about that. So,
Yeah.
the
Better do something special.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we were married, and I had that mentality that if something happened to me, we didn't have any kids yet for that first deployment. She can go, remarry. She'll be fine.
Yeah.
She'll get the SGLI and all that good stuff, and she'll be fine.
Mhm.
Kind of a selfish way to think about it, and
Yeah.
but of course, I'd want her to carry on. Obviously, I wouldn't
Yeah.
want her to
Just
just,
a generic sense of security.
yeah.
Yeah.
The second deployment was when we had our first kid, and that became a lot harder. Not so much worrying about my wife, but worrying about the kid.
Mhm.
And like there was one time you wound up in the hospital, the ER for something, and like you're just helpless.
Yeah.
you're sitting there in the middle of a war zone, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So that kind of sucked, and even through the next 2 deployments, there was we had our other child, and so that continued to just when things went wrong at home, having to deal with that. And but I would say coming home after that fourth deployment is when things really started to change for me, because up till that point, like my second deployment was by far the worst one.
Mhm.
Lost a lot of friends, lost people I cared about, and I
Yeah.
came home angry. I had a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of anger issues from that point on.
What
Uh,
did you what did you deal with that anger, or how did you deal with that anger?
I've been to anger management several times. One of these times it'll take, right? I've made that joke numerous times. But honestly, jumping ahead to 6 months ago is the first time that I felt no anger. So I carried that anger through the rest of my career. It would come and go depending on people I was around, commanders I worked for, whatever. So different things would impact me, and it would also impact my drinking and things like that. So, but like it got to the point after that second deployment that even my mother and my wife were like, "Hey, you need to go talk to somebody." So that's when I first went to anger management, and it helped me, but it didn't fix anything.
Yeah.
It was really just telling somebody, your problems, and that was it. And I'd gone to anger management a couple more times at different duty stations, and each time it helped, but it never got to the root of the problem.
Mhm.
It just kind of leveled me out a little bit,
Yeah.
and
Packing
so
gauze in a gunshot wound, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Alright, so, you have this anger, you're out of the 4th deployment, drinking has been a family has brought this to you, and, I guess, was there ever a thought process of like, "Hey, like, you know what? I need to get back in alignment with God." Like, I know who like, I learned about him. Was there any form of like spiritual awakening at that time? Was there any sort of like, like what was your bottom like to where it's like, "You know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I need to change." And then how did you change?
the 2011, I think it was. Yeah, we just come back. So 2011, we were doing the Geo Bachelor thing. My family was in Atlanta. I was up at Fort Campbell, and so I was driving home one Friday night, and um, I don't remember anything specific happening that like triggered, a response, so much as I was listening to, just a mix of songs I'd put together, and um, there's a song by the Van Zant brothers, the founders of Leonard Skinner and 38 Special.
Yeah.
The two brothers, they did a couple albums, and there was just a line in the one song that said, "Get right with the man," and like by the time I got home, I couldn't shake that, and I don't know why. Well, I kind of know why, but
Yeah, yeah,
at the time I
yeah.
didn't know why. But I walked
Yeah.
in the house and say, "Hey, we're going to church on Sunday." My wife's like, "What?" So not that she was opposed, she just wasn't expecting that from me.
Yeah.
Um, so I looked up some churches, found a local church plant, and we went over there. And we started going, and the two lead pastors, they were about our age. They were younger, and they were just full of energy. They loved doing like they were involved in MMA stuff. They were fit, and they just enjoyed life,
Yeah.
but they were out there trying to help people find God and everything. And so we wound up going to this church, and I got involved in running sound at the church. And uh, it got to the point where I told Matt, the lead pastor, I'm like, "Hey man, I want to get baptized." And so in 2012, in May, we went up to one of the guys in church had his place up in the mountains. So we went up, and I got baptized in this river, and my wife and I renewed our marriage in front of God, because we got married in the courthouse originally.
That's
Um,
awesome though.
so it
That's
was
so
it was a
cool.
yeah, it was a great little weekend. And really a moving moment for me.
Mhm.
The funny part about that is it was probably 6 months after we started going to the church, and Matt, TJ, and I had really become friends, the two pastors. And Matt tells me one day, he goes, "You know, you scared the hell out of us when you walked into church, right?" I was like, what are you talking about?" So a year prior to that, I had just gotten home from Afghanistan. Like it was the morning of I got home from Afghanistan. So I'd been up for like 24, 48 hours, whatever it was. I was tired, I was cranky, and some people knocked on the door. And they started talking about, we're from this church, whatever, and I just slammed the door in their face. Well, you never guess who they turned out to be.
Yeah.
So, and to make matters worse, and I'm not proud of this fact at all. It was the pastor's wife and his daughter that I slammed the door in front of. It wasn't even the
Oh
pastor.
man.
Yeah, I know. I'm an ass. Um, but he's like, when you came walking around the corner, you scared the hell out of us because that's the only memory we had of you.
Well, what I find like this is like, you know, a beautiful symmetry and between the good and the bad, right? Because it's completely a left of a slam a door in the face to like, you know what, I heard a song and I got one line from that song and that stuck with you enough to be like, hey fam, we need to go to church, and end up going to church. Not only did you go to church, you picked a church that the people that you slammed the door on, and then you went up to them and asked those people that you slammed the door on to be like, "Hey, can you baptize me?" It's like, yeah, we need to hold you under a little longer. It's like, geez, man. But
Uh,
like, that's the beauty of the Holy Spirit, of a full circle effect. What a beautiful testimony. And to think now they share that story as well is because they get to see a change in you because they saw a 2-second interaction and now they see somebody that is growing in their faith. So, man, that is awesome. I mean, and I know that's not the end of your story. So let's go. Let's keep going because I want to see now we're climbing mountains, man.
so after that, we moved to Texas, and that would be the end of my deployments. I didn't deploy again for the rest of my career, which my wife was very happy about. But um, we got involved, like we did some church shopping. I hate church shopping. It's one of those things that just drives me
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But through all the shopping and everything, we met some couples that we really, got along with, and we were, taking this journey with God with them. And one of them was really into men's ministry, so he really started planting that seed for men's ministry in me. And we do some one-on-one talking and sessions and things like that. And he'd run some book studies, and um, so through that whole, I decided, because I've always been comfortable in front of people. I was like, well, maybe I'm being called to be a pastor. So I started working on a master's of divinity, and made it about halfway through that before I stopped. And when I stopped, at this point, we'd be in Korea. And I found that I wasn't going to church anymore. I wasn't even in the Bible. I really just completely started backsliding. So San Antonio, we were moving in the right direction, but
I guess a lot. It was a small hill and then went back down.
yeah, yeah, I mean, it kind of was,
Yeah.
it was, we started it, and there was definitely some baseline stuff there that
Mhm.
grew,
Oh yeah.
and there were
Yeah.
some pieces that I carried on, and, um, but ultimately I wound up backsliding, getting into drinking more, and the anger came back, and we weren't going to church anymore. And that's where I really started making excuses. I had an excuse for everything, why we weren't doing it. And really, it's at that point that I truly believe, like, I had Christian imposter syndrome, going on. Like, I believed in God, I believed I was a Christian, but nothing I did or said made you think I was a Christian,
Yeah.
and you know, y- I've always heard people tell these stories about how they felt God or God talked to them or whatever, and I always thought every one of them was out of their minds.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? They're making this up. They're lying, whatever. And that's it. Just kind of kept building that imposter syndrome. Like, how come he's never talked to me?
Yeah.
And
No, it's a bizarre concept. I mean, for
yeah,
people that have never, really had a full encounter with the Holy Spirit or,
yeah,
just felt that overwhelming sense. It's like, dude, just a logical thinker, right, is just going to be like, yeah, that's hogwash, right? Like it's just that, yeah, they're kind of out of the loop, man. They're in some,
yep,
they're someone different. They just feel things, whatever. That's not the truth. Blah blah blah. I'm going to continue to live my life. Or even if they're in the church and they haven't felt that, it's just like, oh, I'm just going to read this book, that everyone reads, and so on and so forth, and they just kind of live life like that. But so there's such a falsehood within that because it's not fulfilling. It's just it's it's essentially like going back to school, right? Of reading a textbook. And if you read it that way, that's all it's going to be is a textbook. But when you're filled, I mean, it's a living book, and it lives it's a, for what it changes your life forever,
Oh yeah.
for one. And for two, it just hits the stories come out different. Because they interchange with your life in itself, and it's from thousands of years ago, 2,000 years ago. So, I mean, that's the major difference that I feel like there's a lot of falsehood within Christianity, and or at least the idea of Christianity, not falsehood in Christianity. Let me correct myself there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's an easy stipulation there to go
Oh
back
yeah.
and forth on. So I guess back to you, Sean, on my soapbox. But
So, uh, Korea was good and bad. I had some good units, I had some great experiences, but at the same time, that's where the peak of my drinking probably hit. And I'll admit it right here that I'm an alcoholic. And it was very clear that I was an alcoholic, but I didn't want to accept it. And basically, I successfully ended my career because of alcohol. Doing stupid things, and the when we left Korea, we went to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and nothing against Savannah and Fort Stewart, Georgia, but we didn't want to be there. That's not where we wanted to go. At one point, we thought we were going to Italy. So to tell us we're going to Fort Stewart, Georgia was a bit of a culture shock.
yeah.
But regardless, it was at that point that, while I was there, um, this was all, right after the big COVID stuff. So COVID was coming and going, and they were still trying to figure out what they were doing with COVID. Um, so just continued to make excuses why we couldn't go to church and everything. And, we knew we were retiring, so, that was going to be the end of, the military career was going to end at Fort Stewart, and we were probably going to move to Jacksonville where we are now. And so as we go through this whole process, um, that's when I really started like trying to quit drinking. Like I went, first time was like 6 months, and then, a couple months here, a couple months there, and just flirting with it, if you will.
Yep.
And so, but once again, no church, no God, you know, periodically praying to the vending machine upstairs, that type of
Mhm.
thing. And so ultimately, we start VET S.O.S. And then right before I get ready to retire, Eric comes on board, and as we reach the end of his year, he decides he's going to go do this ministry thing. Man, I'm excited for him. You feel the passion, and if you don't know
Mhm.
Eric, you'll feel the passion. No matter,
Yes.
you have a conversation with 5 minutes, you feel the passion. And so he left to go, be the Georgia director for Warrior Set Free. And he calls me, hey, I want you to do a freedom appointment. Like, what's a freedom appointment?
Mhm.
Well, it's an all day thing essentially. But basically, it's to help you come, get rid of all the baggage you're carrying, and get closer to God and what have you. And I've told him this. This is I'm not breaking news here. I've told him this, and I apologize to him and Steve for this, because they were the ones who did my freedom appointment. Is I didn't take it seriously.
Mhm.
When I did the freedom appointment, it was more out of obligation to Eric being my friend and him just starting this, ministry, than me wanting to do it.
Mhm.
And so for the next 2 years, Eric would gently prod me about going to a Warriors battle, and at this point I'm retired, you know, still flirting with drinking and not drinking and whatever. I'm making good money, life's good, but there's still things missing, right? And so just the last 3 years has been kind of a whirlwind, trying to figure out what post-military life looks like. And kids are growing up, getting ready to move out of the house, and all that stuff, and you know, just all those little things. And then finally I almost like had a panic attack. Like I had this overwhelming feeling of just heaviness that hit me. And this was right after the military influencer conference that I go to every year. And, I had sat there and I listened to Eric do a presentation on Warrior Set Free. And, I was real proud of him. I got to sit there and watch him do it. And the one thing that stuck out to me in that whole thing was the way he looked at his wife, the whole time because she was up there on stage with him talking about it. And the way he looked at her, I couldn't shake it. I couldn't get that out of my head. I'm like, I've been with my wife for almost 25 years. I love my wife.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I look at her that way. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going on? And so, long story short, leaving the influencer conference, there were some things working, me thinking about them things, some things weighing on me. But then it just, all these old feelings started coming up and all these negative things started coming up. And literally, I felt like I was having a panic attack. And I came home from work one day and I told my wife, I'm like, I think I'm going to go to the Warriors battle. Like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I think I am. And I, for the first time in a while, I prayed a little bit about it, you know? And, during this time, we had flirted with a church, um, did a bunch of church shopping, flirted with another church for a while, hadn't really made a commitment to go to any of them. And, we're going back and forth between going to church and not going to church. But everything was kind of happening and moving, and then it would stop, and so you could definitely, looking back, you can see that the spirit was finally starting to crack through the the wall. But
Yeah.
um, so ultimately went to the Warriors battle, and um, for the first time in my life, felt God's presence. Um, Sitting there on the banks of Lake Altoona, and
Hmm.
it was at that point that I realized what an ass I had been for so long to so many people, um, for doubting their stories, doubting the way they felt, doubting their faith, and realizing that, I'm one of those people that believes that most people get the version of me they deserve,
Mm.
and in a lot of cases that may be true. However, I'm not giving them the person that I should be giving them. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because just because you're mean to me doesn't mean I have to return it tenfold.
No, I
Um,
mean, you think of how we're covered in God's grace and what he
yeah,
gave to us, and by no means,
yeah,
can we ever equate to that, right? So,
right. So, it's almost like regret. You're sitting there going, oh my God, what have I done for 50 years?
mhm.
All the people that I've hurt, I've stepped on, I've ignored, all these things I've done. And, I also realized through all this, it's, finally giving your life to Christ. It's not a 12-step program. Like, I don't have to go make amends with everybody. Obviously, if I ever run into some of these people,
Mhm.
I will definitely apologize if I remember. And
Yeah,
I don't say that jokingly, that there's a lot of things that I don't remember because I
yeah,
drank a lot.
100%. Yeah,
And so, understanding that, um, the person I was in October of 2025 is not the same person I was the second week of November 2025.
yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
crazy how that changes, man.
yeah. And, it started from the night I came home. My wife's like, I knew as soon as you walked in the door, there was something different. The way you hugged me, the way you looked at me, the way you talked to me, and, you know, do you still make mistakes? Do you still slip up? Absolutely. We're human,
Yeah,
but the funny thing is how open your eyes are now and how
yeah.
you see things. You're like, oh,
Mhm,
what am I doing?
mhm.
And how I don't crave the bottle anymore. I've been sober for 7 months. I
That's
don't have a
awesome, brother.
desire to drink at all.
That is
You know,
awesome.
when I have that bad day, I go to prayer now. I go to the Bible, and it's just like, you know, I can't blame anybody because the
Yeah,
answer's always been there.
yeah.
It's just I was too hard at it. But at the same time, I also know that God had me take this journey for a reason. And there's people that maybe I can reach that someone else who didn't go through the stuff I went through can reach. And
100%.
and so that there's reasons I went through what I went through. And that doesn't disqualify me from serving God and helping lead others to him. And
Yeah, no,
so
I think that's the most beautiful thing about ministry, in itself is, I mean, you look at the 12 disciples and what you realize, I mean, they're just ordinary guys that, did some basic things. Nobody was a scholar, nobody was this, that, or the other. It was people connected. And I mean, that's what we're all called to do, right? Is like, I mean, once you have it, it's like, why? It's like, there's not like a level of discipleship. It's like once you become like, it's like, Lord, I'm yours. hey, guess what you got? Like, you are now a disciple of Christ. Go out and make some more, brother. So, I mean, what an amazing calling. And I do want to backtrack a little bit because there's a note that I had when you were talking about when you did your freedom appointment, and you said you didn't really have the faith within it. It was just like you did it begrudgingly, right? Just based on a friendship of someone else, right? And it made me think of the story of the man being healed to walk again, and he got lowered down into the hut. Jesus was preaching, and all their friends were doing all this work just to get him to Jesus, right? Just to get him in front. And I was like, I'm going to do everything I can because I believe in Jesus. Man that was being lowered, that needed the healing, didn't really believe. But in turn, out of the faith of those around him, started to move. A- And so it just made me think of that. And then you told the story of you being hit by watching Eric essentially admire his wife. I started to tear up there because my wife has actually said those words. And I was like, you know what? A dream and an admiration for me is because just like you said, like, I love my wife, but like, I want that. I want for me to just be like randomly like looking at my wife and my wife to turn and like visualize me like admiring her in that way. And I want her to just fall into tears and be like, wow, my husband like admires me. And I think the great transition with that, and just how you said when you came home, your wife, she said, you hugged me different. You looked at me different. You stood different. You spoke different. And it's not because like you are a different person, but like you're the same person. God made you in his image, but now you encompass a new identity, which is essentially larger than yourself. So you're able to love more. You're able to admire more. You're able to care more. And I think that's the beauty of what Christ has done within your life, within my life, within so many others. Um, and it's an amazing transition, right? Like you cannot not tell the truth about it. It's like if somebody was talking to me and like, hey man, you want it's like, no, dude, I'm not. Like, it's what happened. And if you don't believe me, ask my wife. She'll tell you the truth because it's a change. So I think that's the amazing transition. And then just to see, I mean, that wasn't that long ago. Right?
No, it
6
wasn't.
months 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was with you, right? Like, that's where we got to meet. That's how this all started here today, which is another testimony in itself. I mean, to be 6 months later after visiting a place to just have I mean, we only spent 4 days together and the rest have been random phone conversations. And for this podcast to even start, for me to host it, for us to have that interaction, I mean, all of those are biblically bound in some level. I mean, like, you can't make this stuff up. And I think that's the most beauty is like it's a story worth telling on how things happen, right?
I
Um,
I love like sitting there like on the back porch and just, letting my mind wander sometimes. And I just picture, God sitting up there with the story that he's written out going, this guy Chase, he doesn't see this coming. Wait till he sees this turn here that's going to happen afterwards. And, let's see what happens here. And, hey, guys, check this out. Watch what happens, and it's
yeah,
like,
no, no. I mean, dude, it is so it's you say it like that, and I almost said a very similar message to my sister-in-law because I got a brother right now that he gets to go to the battle. He gets to go through this process, and I'm so grateful for it. But I said, in my mess, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like, I was like, I was like, my brother gets to be the first one. I was like, but just watch how the family transitions because he's not going to be the only one. I was like, sit back. It's going to happen again. And we're going to do it again because we're going to get stronger. As my light shines, as his light shines, we're going to go on and continue to light that flame because that's what we're called to do. And I don't care if it's one, I don't care if it's two, I don't care if it's, reach a mountaintop and you're shouting and you get 1,000 people all at once. I mean, one is enough, thousands better, right?
oh yeah.
So, I mean, that's the amazing thing, and that's what I just know that a whole I just know the Holy Spirit's going to bless this podcast. He's going to bless you. He's going to bless your family, and just to see your walk. And I mean, man, dude, you've had a fire ever since then. Like, literally, it's been inspiring to watch, to be a part of, for you to be on my team. especially when I'm hurting, because 100% I am not a perfect person, just like you said. Got all sorts of things. I've had to go back to cross several different times. And the beauty is now that we recognize it and we can say, you know what, this is where I fit. Like you called me to do this and I did not meet that. And so I get to come, we as people, we as men, we get to go to the foot of the cross again. And, I'm going to ask for forgiveness and I'm going to change. It's not just, hey, I'm sorry. You know, it's not just like, oh, better luck next time. It's like, no, like this was wrong and you deserve better. And so I'm going to be better. And you can watch me be better because I'm going to lead by example. And that's the beauty of it. And that's the difference where I think even men at this day and age just don't follow. And they like, it's like, hey, you really want to lead your family? This is how you do it. And no lie, like, I don't care what branch of service you're in. I don't care how hard, tough, whatever you think, blah, blah, blah. You ain't got this at your foundation, like, dude, you're not gonna lead correctly. You're gonna royally screw up and you're not gonna have the relationships you want with your family. And I'm not doing that to say that to be mean. I'm saying that because like I honestly believe that to be true. Cause like I know it's changing within my family. I know how Chase led his family prior to and how he leads his family now. It's two way different
Oh yeah.
people. Um, and so I guess I just want to close. I'm on a soapbox and I'm just kind of going after it. So but I want to close this out and I want to pray for you, Shawn. Is there anything specific that I can pray for you this week?
Oh man. Um, just the family, man. My wife, and I celebrating 25 years.
That's a
My
good
son,
one.
yeah, my son turns 21, and I won't be drinking with him.
There you go.
But we got, our youngest is working on his driver's license, so a lot of big monumental things this year, in the Welsh household, and just continue to pray for the family that they did well, and to continue to pray for our brothers and sisters that they get the help that they need, and they I'll tell you, I've tried a lot of programs. I've tried a lot of things, and that it's a lot different when you go to God.
Yeah. All right. I got one more thing. So I was thinking of a thing. So like, I'm a builder by trade, right? So it's like I had this whole tagline of like, hey, you need a plumber? I know a guy. You need HVAC? I know a guy. You need a builder? I know a guy. Hey, you need to be spiritually awakened, you need healing? I know a guy.
Oh yeah,
And so like that's the beauty of it. It's like, hey, you want to know something that actually works, that actually is going to be healing, that you're going to have to face some very difficult things, but it's going to be well worth it in the end? I know a guy. So man, that's a good setup right there. I know a guy. Man, we'll make that the
your new,
hashtag or
there you go,
tagline for
there you
for
go,
for the show this time.
your new
All right,
T-shirt line.
my t-shirt line for sure. All right. Well, let's bow our heads and pray, brother.
Absolutely,
Um, our Father in heaven, I just want to lift up Shawn. What an amazing man, amazing son that you have put on this earth, and so many people. You put a fire within him. We ask that you continue to bless that endeavor. May this podcast, may what his vision, may your vision, be just amplified within it. We are all about the 99, trying to find the one. May this continue to hit home for so many others. But we especially want to uplift Shawn and his family. We just ask that you bless him. For one, being 25 years married, what an amazing miracle at this day and age. I mean, it shows so much trust, so much dedication, so much loyalty, and so much growth. I just we truly ask that you bless that day on their anniversary that they get to spend together. We want to uplift his son being 21. May he be spiritually mature, sound with his friends. We ask that you surround him and make sure that he is safe in his night out on being 21. And his other son that is about to be 16 and get on the road, may he be blessed in that endeavor. Monuments and change happening within his family. We just asked for a hedge of protection over each one of those areas and a blessing within their marriage. We say all this in the power of the Lord Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
amen,
Now, before we send off again, this is Testimony Strong. It is presented, not presented by VET S.O.S. And this has so many other channels on it. If you're a veteran, please check them out. If you just general guidance and awareness. And then obviously, if Sean's testimony hit anywhere home for you and how it relates to you, or you know somebody, please share it with them. That is the whole premise behind this podcast. We don't care if it reaches 10 people or one, as long as we go after the one. That's the whole point. And so we just pray blessings upon all of you. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.